All right, I think we're ready to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. My name is David. I'm a national organizer with Greenpeace based here in San Francisco, and I get the pleasure of moderating our live chat tonight. I also get the pleasure of working with group leaders and volunteers all over the country on Greenpeace campaigns with our National Activist Network. And for folks who may be new to the National Activist Network, it's our national network of volunteers who tackle the toughest problems facing our climate, our oceans, our forests, do local organizing in their communities, and really build people power to help us win campaigns. So the network activates thousands of Greenpeace supporters really at the heart of this cutting-edge program. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce our executive director, Annie Leonard. Annie is a veteran environmental campaigner and the creator of the influential web video, The Story of Stuff, which I'm sure a lot of you have seen. And Annie began her career at Greenpeace International in 1988 and returned to us in 2014 to help the organization inspire and mobilize millions of people to take action to create a more sustainable future together. So Annie, I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to you to talk a little bit about what we've done this year.
Thank you so much, David. It is really a pleasure to be here. It is my favorite thing. So, I get to do a lot of great things as the executive director of Greenpeace, but my favorite thing is connecting with our volunteers. This is actually my second favorite thing because my first favorite thing would be connecting with you in person. But for now, this will have to suffice. But it's really a pleasure to be here. I want to thank you with all of my heart for the work that you have done with and for Greenpeace over this last year. We really could not have won the amazing victories that we have won without you. It was a great year in 2015. We together accomplished a huge amount, and volunteers played a key role in every single one of our campaigns. Of course, the most visible one, which I know many of you worked on, was the campaign against Shell's idiotic plans to drill in the Arctic, and Obama's even more idiotic giving Shell permission to drill in the Arctic. And stopping Shell Oil and getting Obama to change his mind, those are really big, audacious, difficult things, but together we did them. So thank you so much for that. And thank you from future generations are going to be so happy about that. We also did amazing work together around sustainable seafood and Aramark. We did amazing work also with the Repower Our Schools project against coal exports, the amazing gatherings in Portland and Seattle. I was in both Portland and Seattle, and I met a number of you there, which was a real thrill. If I'm ever in another event where you guys are, please make sure you come and introduce yourself to me, because it is just such a joy for me to meet the people on the front lines of this work. I've been doing environmental work for about 30 years now, and it's been fascinating to watch the evolution of our environmental movement and the evolution of Greenpeace, and to see what we've done well and what we need. We have accomplished a huge amount during that time. We have saved forests, we have stopped incinerators, excuse me, we have canceled oil drilling, and the world is a better place because of the work that we have done, both Greenpeace and the broader movement. But all of that is not enough. We have to even do more in the decade ahead. This decade is a really, really critical time. We are the first generation to have a truly global understanding of the environmental threats that we face, and we are the last generation with a window to do something about it, to make the necessary change. And that's why I came back to Greenpeace, because this is the most important decade for the environment of my life so far, and this is the best platform you can bring to that battle, is Greenpeace. And so we need much bigger, stronger, bolder change, and I believe the number one way that we do that is through people power, through engaging more volunteers, recruiting more people, and really building a mass public movement demanding change. We have everything we need to live on this planet in a more sustainable and just way. We have model policies that we know work because they're being applied elsewhere. We have innovative technologies. We have great economic arguments and case studies. We have common sense. We have everything we need to live more sustainably, except the power to make it so. And the way that we get that power is through activism, through organizing, through volunteering, through building movements. And so that's what you guys are all part of. And again, I cannot thank you enough. My biggest priority in coming back to Greenpeace is building this movement, and that means engaging with all of you guys. And the track record that you have is totally exciting. When I learned about the National Activist Network, which had grown so much since I was at Greenpeace 20 years ago, I was absolutely thrilled that we get to work together. I have a list of some of the things that we did together in 2015. Volunteers, including you guys on this call, hosted 80 black ice movie screenings about the Arctic 30, resulting in over 800 petition signatures to the Obama administration. That's a lot. You drove in over 3,000 phone calls to Obama asking him to reject Shell's permits to drill for oil in the Arctic, and I guess he listened because he rejected them. You had letters to the editor writing parties. Letters to the editors is the most read part of a newspaper, and so it is a fabulous way to make your voice heard and to amplify it. And you guys organized parties to do letters to the editor all across the country and help get this story out to the broader public. You organized rallies at gas stations, at Shell stations. You got in kayaks from coast to coast to make our voices heard. And you hosted climate rallies for the People's Climate Movement National Day of Action. You also recruited a lot of new people, thousands of your friends and families and neighbors, to create climate ribbons explaining why they cared about climate, which helped build the Climate Ribbon Tree art installation at the recent Conference of Parties, what we call COP, the big climate conference in Paris. And on the sustainable seafood front, you guys gathered hundreds and hundreds of petitions demanding that Aramark commit to sustainable tuna practices. I really love that campaign, not just because it is so important to take care of our oceans, but because the way that Greenpeace works on sustainability includes social justice and human rights. And so we've been telling these tuna companies, you have to treat the ocean sustainably, and you also have to treat the workers sustainably, because you can't have sustainable seafood if the fish are caught by slaves, basically, is what's happening. So I was really thrilled about that campaign, what a strong social justice bent it had. I want to give a few shout-outs to volunteers who were particularly active. Special thanks to the folks volunteering with the Greenpeace campaign coordinators in the frontline offices across the country, and with our field organizers on the Arctic oil and coal exports in the Pacific Northwest, which is my home. I'm from Seattle, so I love seeing the Greenpeacers out in full force in the Pacific Northwest, and in the Repower Our Schools campaign in North Carolina. I got to meet some of them a few months ago. Absolutely thrilling. Specifically, I want to give a special nod to Colin, Kelly, Jenny, Brian, Chris, Rouge, Jessica, and Allison in the Pacific Northwest. And also with our community coach volunteers who are supporting our newest volunteers, Val, Adam, Sarah, Anna, Melissa, Aaron, and Caitlin. It's so weird that I'm talking to a camera instead of actually seeing your faces, because I know all of you guys are on this call. And to community group leaders, we have Caroline in Las Vegas, Brooke in Fountain Valley, California, Kathy in Highland Park, New Jersey, Diane in Cincinnati, Steve in New York City, Sam and Brian in Philadelphia, Allie in Phoenix, Stephanie and Ada in Dallas, Terry in Castro Valley, and Mateo in Miami. Well, isn't that cool that we have volunteers in all of those places? And the college campus groups are so great. I got to meet some of you a couple of summers ago at one of your meetings. Fantastic work that you guys are doing. Caitlin at UNCW, Nick at University of Denver, Hasmik at Syracuse, that's where my family is from, Syracuse, Matt at BGSU, Anna at MSU, and not just college students, but high school groups. It is fantastic that we are recruiting even younger leaders. Emmy at Golden, Amy and Sophia at Spruce Creek, Roshini in the Bay Area, Ananya at Flanders in New Jersey, and Vrinda in the Bay Area. I am so thrilled to see the students involved, because if you look at social movements throughout the world and throughout history, always students have been at the forefront of change, and students have been the ones putting their bodies on the line, whether it's fighting for democracy in Burma or the civil rights movement in the American South. Students have been the tip of the change force, and it's great to see so many students engaged in this work. So we've done a lot in 2015, but we have even more in 2016. We have some really exciting campaigns coming up that are getting a lot of traction and that I hope you guys will be even more involved in. Two of our priority campaigns that you'll be hearing much more about in the coming year are the Keep It in the Ground campaign and our campaign around democracy and money in politics. I just want to say a couple words on each of those. The Keep It in the Ground campaign is about keeping fossil fuels in the ground. Scientists tell us that if we want to keep the global temperature within a range in which human beings can continue to live, which would be a good thing, I'd like to advocate for keeping the global temperature within a range in which we can continue to live, we are going to have to keep 80% of known fossil fuel reserves under the ground. That's why we say keep it in the ground. The way that a lot of environmentalists have previously focused on fighting carbon is looking at the emissions, how much comes out of the smokestack or the tailpipe. We're switching now to focusing on don't drill the stuff, don't mine the stuff, don't dig it in the first place, don't frack it. Keep the oil in the soil, keep it in the ground. So we're going to have a lot of campaign opportunities to stop fracking, to stop coal mining on public lands, to stop new oil and gas drilling, no more fossil fuel extraction. So that's one really exciting campaign. The other campaign that's really important is about democracy and money in politics. And it might seem funny for an environmental group to be focusing on democracy. There are lots of groups who that's their main focus. But what we have increasingly realized is that the absolute best tool that we have to save the planet is our democracy, and it's not available to us right now because it has been hijacked by corporate interests. And that's true not just for environmentalists, but pretty much anybody trying to do anything good in this country, whether it's build better public transportation or cleaner water or better schools or human rights or pretty much anything good, we eventually butt up against the limit of the corporate control of our democracy. And so in order to get our democracy working for people on the planet, we have got to get money out, reduce the influence of corporate money into politics, and then get voters back in. Money out, voters in. So we are doing a campaign to reduce corporate influence in democracy and to protect the right to vote across this country. The right to vote has just been under assault in this country in a racist and horrible way. And we are going to join with our allies in the civil rights movement. We're working with NAACP to fight against those rollback on voting rights so that we can really have a democracy that works for people and the planet rather than for the polluters. Those are two of our big campaigns coming up. As again, I promise you there will be lots of opportunities to engage. And just like on the tuna campaign and just like on the Shell Arctic campaign, we really cannot win without you. So thank you for being part of our network. Thank you for being part of our organization. Thank you for being part of the incredibly exciting movement to build a sustainable future. Back to you, David.
Thank you so much, Annie. And thanks everybody who's tuning in from around the country. So if you've got questions for Annie, go ahead and post them on Twitter or hashtag Greenwire15, or post them directly to Greenwire at greenwire.greenpeace.org. So our first question for you, Annie, is what was your favorite moment from 2015?
Oh my gosh, there's so many moments from 2015. This really was a great year. I think my favorite, it's really hard to pick though, I think one of my favorite moments was that moment in Seattle when so many of us were in kayaks confronting the Polar Pioneer. And the reason that that was so powerful to me is that it wasn't just Greenpeace staff out there on the water. It wasn't just people who it was their paid job to go and do that. It really was a mass movement. It really was a community event. We had allies from the indigenous communities, from the racial justice communities, from the economic justice communities. We had labor union allies there. We had Greenpeace members and volunteers and supporters and alumni. I mean, it was absolutely a beautiful rainbow of community of people out there. And it made me think that's what a movement is. You know, for too long, environmentalists thought that if we had the right science, change would happen. And we have the right science. You know, we definitely know that the current trajectory is not sustainable. If common sense and the truth would set us free, we would be free because we have a lot of truth. What we really need is a mass movement. In Seattle, looking at that paddle in Seattle, and I know many of you were there, I just got this delicious taste in my mouth of what it would look like to have a mass movement for the environment. And we're getting closer to that every single day.
Awesome. Thank you, Annie. So we just got a question from Twitter from Gaurav Pankar, and the question is, does the Keep It in the Ground campaign mean that Greenpeace will be pushing for renewables?
Absolutely, we are pushing for renewables. That is gigantic. We're pushing for renewables partly for the energy issue, but also for the justice issue. So we have a slogan, 100% renewable energy for 100% of the people. So that has two aspects to it. One is transitioning to a clean energy, renewable energy economy. But the second thing is making sure that everybody has access to it. So 100% of the renewables, for 100% renewable for 100% of the people. Right now, there's a huge number of people on the planet who don't have access to any electricity at all. I used to live in India for Greenpeace. I spent 3 years living in Bangladesh and India, which was an incredible experience. There are villages there where kids can't go to school because there is no light for them to do homework. So if we just go in and say no more coal plants, we're dooming these guys to darkness. So we have to include the environmental piece, clean energy, 100% renewable, and the justice piece for 100% of the people, so that everybody has right to light and heat and the things that they need for a healthy life, and that we power it all sustainably. So we have a very, very strong renewable energy campaign in the United States and in all 40 countries where we work.
Awesome. Thanks again, Annie. All right, we've got a couple more questions. What are you most excited for Greenpeace to do in 2016?
Oh my gosh, you can't make me just say one thing because there's too many things. I mean,
maybe three top things.
The number one thing I'm excited about is building our national activist network, recruiting more people to be involved in this movement, because we are going to win when it really is a movement. So that's my number one thing, recruiting more people and figuring out more meaningful ways for people to engage. I don't want to just ask people sign this petition, even though a petition is a very useful tactic sometimes. I want to figure out deeper ways that we can work together to strengthen this work all across the country. So increased engagement and increased connections with all of you. That's my most important thing. I'm really interested in this democracy work. Because through the democracy work, Greenpeace is building connections with groups that historically we haven't united with. I mean, we, the environmental movement, historically, environmentalists have stayed here, and civil rights groups have stayed here, and labor groups have stayed here. We've all stayed in our silos and worked on our particular area. And sometimes even the polluters would tell us bad things about each other in order to keep us separate. But when we are separate, we are not as strong. And so through this democracy work that we're doing partnerships with the NAACP, with Communication Workers of America, with the AFL-CIO, a big partnership with the Sierra Club. We do a lot of work with Rainforest Action Network. The more that we can break down these silos and work together and realize that our success or our failure is so interconnected. We are not going to win on environment if we still have such a massively unequal society. And you're not going to win on equality if we trash the planet. So we've got to figure out ways to work better and be a stronger overall movement. I think that's another thing I'm really excited about.
Thanks, Annie. So we have a question from Nick Sexton on Greenwire. How do we stop power companies from shutting down residential solar with fees? And how do we get around the issue of power companies going out of business with the solar movement?
How we stop power companies from harassing solar owners is by changing the rules of the game. In many states, there are actually financial penalties or prohibitions for people to put solar on, or for third parties to put solar on the roof. And so we need to change the rules. I think there are 4 things that the environmental movement has to do, and we have to do them all. So you figure out which one is most appropriate where you are and which one is the best match for your skill set and your personality. But the 4 things that the environmental movement has to do, number 1 is fight the bad stuff. There are new coal-fired power plants, new garbage incinerators, clear-cutting, all kinds of bad things that are hurting the planet and the people. So number 1 is we've got to fight the bad. Number 2 is we got to build the good. That's where things like renewable energy come in. If we're always saying don't do this, don't do this, don't do this, then we become drags and people don't want to invite us to their parties and hang out with us anymore. We have to also be putting forward solutions. So we fight the bad, we build the good. The third thing we all need to do is change the rules. Right now there are a number of rules about how our economy works in this country that actually prohibit or deter environmental solutions. We need to change the rules so that it becomes easier and cheaper to do the right thing. Now we have to often go out of our way, and it's more expensive to do the environmentally correct thing. So we need to change the rules. And then the 4th thing is that we need to change the story. And what I mean by that is that our society has a lot of stories that we tell ourselves. And we tell ourselves these stories so much that we forget that they are stories. We begin to think they're actually the truth. There are stories like, well, you have to choose between jobs and the environment. You can't have both. That is absolutely not true. And in fact, there are more jobs in transitioning to a clean energy economy. Another story is that some communities matter more than others. And so it's okay to put a coal-fired power plant in the same community that already has a sewage treatment plant and a truck depot and all this other stuff, because that community doesn't matter. Absolutely not. We've got to have environmental justice as part of our analysis. So there are many stories, and if you just sort of think about that, the stories that you hear out there in society, one of the stories that is most dangerous that we need to change is when people say, there's nothing I can do. I'm just a student, or I'm just a mom, or I'm just a farmer, or there's really nothing I can do. It's just the way it is. Absolutely not true. There is something every single one of us can do. And so we can all be a part, we already are all a part of changing that story and making sure that people know that they have a role to play and they have agency and power in building a sustainable future. So those are the 4 fronts that I think we need to be working.
Thanks, Annie. All right, we've got a couple more questions, and folks, again, if you have questions for Annie, post them to Twitter with the hashtag Greenwire15, or go to greenwire.greenpeace.org and post your questions there. So Annie, Maria wants to know, what do you think is the best way people can make an impact in their communities?
You know, I get asked that a lot, and I don't like to say just one thing because everybody's different. I mean, some people get really excited about youth education, and they want to educate the next generation to care about these issues. Some people get really excited about local food production, and they want to promote sustainable food. There really are so many ways to get engaged. There's so many ways that we don't even have to pick something boring. We can pick something that's a good match for our interests and our skill set. And, you know, this is a long, hard struggle that we're in. I've already been spending 30 years working on this, and I hope all of you spend at least 30 years also making the world a better place. So we got to pick something that we love, something that we feel passionate about and that brings us joy, because that's going to make our days more joyful. And we don't need to be martyrs to do this work. We can have joy when we do it. So pick something that is joyful. But if I had to pick the #1 thing for folks to do, I'd say it's to start or join a group of people that want to work on this, because we can make so much more change when we are together. When we're individuals alone, we're only one voice. And while one voice can make a difference, it can't make as much of a difference as 2 voices or 4 voices or 10 voices. So the #1 thing is to get together, recruit other people to join or start an organization if there isn't one already in your school or community, and then get involved in making change. It's more fun and it's more effective if we do it together.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Annie. All right, I think we've got one more question for you. I'm just waiting to get the question in. So it looks like, what brought you back to Greenpeace?
That's a great question. So I worked for Greenpeace the first decade after I finished college, and it was an amazing opportunity for me to work here. I got such a good training. It was actually, don't tell my parents this, but it was actually much better than college in terms of the training that I got about the world, about how you make change. But after almost a decade, I went and worked for a whole bunch of different organizations for 18 years. And I was actually turning 50 years old. And I was thinking, 50 years old is a milestone in life. 50s is the time when you start to realize your ability or your time period to make change is no longer infinite. When you're 20, it feels like you have forever to make change. And so I started thinking really strictly about where can I go to make the most impact possible. And I was actually in the process of calling up and interviewing different people. I called up some academics that I knew that specialize in sustainability, some really sustainable businesses that I knew, to ask them what were the opportunities. So I was right in the middle of this sort of self-research project to figure out where is the most powerful place I could go. And somebody from the Greenpeace Board of Directors called me up and said, would you be interested in applying for the executive director job at Greenpeace? And I thought, heck yes! Oh my gosh, Greenpeace is the most amazing platform to bring to the battle. One of the reasons that Greenpeace is so amazing is because Greenpeace takes no money from corporations or governments. Most environmental groups do take money from corporations or governments, and that can limit their freedom for what they say. We never have to hold back from what we know is true. We can be as courageous as possible because we don't have to worry about alienating some big donor, because our donor is millions of people like all of you. So that's one of the reasons coming back to Greenpeace is so great, is because we don't have to compromise. We can say the truth. We can say what the science demands. The other reason that coming back to Greenpeace is so great is because all of you guys, millions of people know and love the brand of Greenpeace and want to engage with us, and that is our real source of power, is all of our volunteers and activists like you. So it's awesome to be back. I'm incredibly, incredibly honored, and take it very seriously. I want to do my absolute best to steer this organization, help us be the strongest we can possibly be, and win this stuff.
Thanks, Annie. We're glad to have you back. We've got one from Thomas Berry on Twitter. Hey, Annie, though Greenpeace has never endorsed a politician, the democracy campaign is what Bernie stands for. Why not support him?
Greenpeace does not support politicians anywhere on the planet because it's part of keeping our independence. If we ever endorsed politicians or got in the business of endorsing politicians, we could lose our independence. And we think that our independence is one of the greatest assets we have. So we won't endorse people, but we will endorse ideas. And Bernie just produced the most incredible climate plan I have ever seen from a politician. And so if you go to Bernie's climate website, you will see a quote from me as the first quote there. We absolutely endorse that plan. We don't endorse candidates just out of principle. As an organization, we don't. But we absolutely endorse good ideas, and I'm seeing more good ideas coming out of Bernie than I've seen from any politician in my lifetime.
Thanks, Annie. We've got one from Colin Karosky on Twitter. What are some of the biggest challenges, or what were the biggest challenges 2015 presented, and how can we learn from these hurdles and improve?
So I think one of the biggest challenges is figuring out where to focus. There are so many problems in the world, and we wish we could do everything. But if we try to do everything, then we end up doing nothing because we're spread too thin. So that is the biggest challenge every day here, is each time we decide to do something, there's 100 things we are not doing then because of that. And it's really, really painful to make those decisions. We want to pick those things that are the most strategic and that most push us forward towards a sustainable and just society, but that means not doing other things. I think that the antidote to that is growing our movement. You know, the more volunteers, the more activists we get in our activist network, the more things we can do. But that is the biggest challenge, is of the huge number of problems, which ones are we going to prioritize? It is a constant struggle here.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Annie. It looks like those are all the questions we have for the moment. If folks have others to ask, we'll see if there's a couple minutes left at the end. So Annie has talked a lot about the ways that volunteers and communities have made an impact to help Greenpeace win these national and global campaigns. So I wanted to share, as one of the folks who gets the joy of working with volunteers across the country, a little bit about what volunteering with us looks like. So it's a really great way to help us build power for the planet and for people. Through our group leader program, we're able to give Greenpeace a voice and a face on the ground and support organizing in local communities. Our group leaders get support from Greenpeace organizers and are able to connect with other folks making a difference across the country. And it's without the folks on the ground, we could not win some of the big victories we've had this year, like stopping shell drilling in the Arctic, like getting Aramark, one of the biggest food service companies in the world, to commit to making the switch to sustainable seafood. And those victories really would not happen without you. So Annie, I'm going to pass it back to you to talk a little bit about what the best way for folks to get involved in the next year will be.
Well, the best way really is to either join a local Greenpeace group, or if there isn't one already in your community, start one. And we can provide a lot of support and guidance. It might sound intimidating to start a group. Actually, to all the people on this call, that is probably not intimidating. You guys are such seasoned activists. But if you recruit new people, they might feel a little intimidated. We can provide a lot of coaching and support and campaign materials and other things. So we'll really help you guys help us. I mean, we can have a great collaborative relationship. So go to Greenwire, see if there's a group there, and also help us recruit more people to Greenwire. I probably everybody on this call knows what Greenwire is, but if not, it's our online social network, and you can sign up from our website. You can either go to greenwire.greenpeace.org, or just go to the Greenpeace website, and there's a little button that says Volunteer with Us. You can go there and sign up for Greenwire. I'm on Greenwire, so you can also send me messages, and I love Greenwire, because you can find out what's happening in your community And if you live in a community where nothing's happening, it's up to you to turn the volume up on that level of activity. There's lots of things you can do. And again, we'll make it easy for you guys. We'll help give you videos, or you don't use videos anymore, DVDs. I'll give you DVDs if you want to host a house party to watch a Greenpeace film, petitions, all kinds of campaign material. We've had volunteers sign up on Greenwire and then set up tables in their community in front of a grocery store, in their high schools or colleges to recruit more and more people. Help us build the movement. We are only as strong as our base of volunteers and supporters, and so that is the most important thing for you to do. We cannot win these campaigns without people power. As I said before, if scientific truth was enough to make change, we'd be done. We could all go have other careers, but scientific truth is not. The thing that we need the most to add on to that scientific truth is people power to force the change, and that's where all of you guys come in. So please sign up on Greenwire, find a group, start a group, be part of our national activist network, be part of Greenpeace, know how much it means to me, and how thrilled and happy I am to be back here working with all of you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Annie, for joining us tonight and sharing a little bit with folks why you've come back and some of your favorite things that have happened this year and what you're looking forward to in 2016. I think we've got a really big opportunity to make a huge impact next year and change the game, change the stories we're telling. So if you're interested in starting a local Greenpeace group or connecting with a group in your area, go to greenwire.greenpeace.org. Once you make an account, you can find local groups. If you want to look into starting a local Greenpeace group, we would love to support you in doing that. At the top of the page, you'll see a Get Involved tab, and just click Start a Local Greenpeace Group. It'll walk you through it. You can also find me on Greenwire. If you look on the main page, I'm right there right now because I've been posting about this live chat all day. So feel free to find me there and reach out. We're here to support you. We want to help you build the movement locally. And with that, I think we can go ahead and wrap up. Annie, do you have any closing thoughts?
No, just thank you guys so much. And really, if you are at a Greenpeace event where I am, please come and introduce yourself to me, because the people I hold in the highest regards are all of our volunteer activists, and I would love to meet you guys in person. So I look forward. Hopefully, I'll meet more of you in 2016.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Annie. Thanks to all of our volunteers, group leaders, lead activists, community coaches, folks who are just now joining us. We'll see you on Greenwire and in 2016. Bye.
Bye.